So welcome everyone. What I'm showing you in this video is how to finish the edges when you've mounted a work on paper onto a cradled panel. So notice that I have my Makita orbital sander. It's a really great sander. It collects the dust. You can see that little dust bag. And this is in time lapse because it's, you want to take your time, and I wanted to speed up the video so that you wouldn't just be sitting there. But also notice that I have a mask on, and I also have my goggles because there's a lot of wood dust that comes off in this process. And I also put the panel on top of this, it's kind of like a moving pad because I wanted to be able to see where all that wood dust was going, and I kind of vacuum that up, you'll see as we go along. But essentially, depending on how much paint or gesso or whatever you've got on your cradle, which is the side of the panel, that determines how long and how much you sand and the grit of your paper. I have kind of a medium grit. It's not terribly coarse because I don't really have that much that was on my cradle. I had a few drips of gesso, but I believe I had taped to my side so that after I gessoed it so that I would not get oil paint on the side. So, and then occasionally I'll take a hand sander to kind of hold it at a 45-degree angle with the edge, just to make sure that the painting, which is on paper again, is has a nice clean edge and is not overlapping the cradle. Like, you don't want your paper to be going beyond the cradle. That would not look very professional. So occasionally I will take that hand sandpaper and just make that edge a little bit nicer. So I'm going through all four panels of this painting in the very same way. Take your time, and you'll notice that as the sawdust kind of falls on the face of the painting, I've got a hand vacuum cleaner to get that off too. And that's a pretty important thing before you do the next step, which I'm going to show you in this video, which is how to varnish the painting. So you want to get all that sawdust off of your painting after you're done sanding. And there's going to be, quite a bit there. Now, you don't have to use a vacuum cleaner. You could just use like a soft brush that's dedicated for that purpose. But I find the vacuum cleaner to be pretty convenient. If you notice any edges of your painting at this point that are maybe not completely glued down, this would be the time for you to add just a little bit of glue. And this is what I'm doing right now. I'm using Line Code Neutral pH adhesive, but you don't have to use that product. You could use like a gel medium, a polymer gel medium. So I use a blade to get that glue under the corner, and then usually what I'll do is I'll cover it with either wax paper or freezer paper with the glossy side down, or in this case a piece of the mighty board, and clamp it so that as it's drying, I make sure that corner really gets dried down. I don't want any corners coming up because that's not good. Here I'm just showing you a little bit of gesso that dripped on the sides. It's not a whole lot, but I'm not going to just sand where the gesso is. I'm going to sand the entire cradle because I don't want it to have dips. I want it to be all, you sand the entire thing until the gesso goes away, or if you have paint, you want to sand until, sand evenly the entire part of that cradle until all the paint is gone. Now you could also paint the sides, and if you did that, you could either paint it with acrylic, or you could paint it with cold wax medium and oil. You could do that, but then that would take longer to dry. So I often like to just have my bare sides, like with the wood showing, no color, keep it simple, and then I'll show you in the final stage how I take care of that. Okay, so you saw me sanding the cradle. I had the mask on and the goggles because I was protecting myself from all that sawdust, and it can be pretty nasty if you keep inhaling that over a long period of time. These are some large cradles, and they mostly had just a little bit of like dripped gesso on the sides because I usually tape the sides with the plastic mailing tape, and that works pretty well. It kind of keeps it pretty clean, but yeah, there was some gesso on there, so I wanted to sand it to get that off. And because this was paper mounted on panel, you want to be kind of careful with the edges. I did notice one little corner started to come just a little bit away from the cradle, and I slipped in some Line-Co pH neutral glue. You probably saw me doing that, but that just fixes the problem. And then I clamped it, so in about 30 minutes it'll be ready. So now, this is a cold wax medium in oil painting. I've got my Gamblin cold wax medium, and I'm just gonna use it plain. I'm not gonna add any Gelca gel to it. I'm just going to basically put it onto the surface and work it in. Go grab a Messermeister. And because I did sand this, you probably saw me vacuuming that, but I'm gonna just lightly take this paper towel over the surface and make sure that I don't have a lot of sawdust on top. I think I got it all. Here's the test. I don't really see any sawdust on my paper towel. That's good. My vacuum cleaner kind of pooped out on me, so now it's charging, but I think I got it all. So to apply it, basically, here's the cold wax medium, and I'm just going to take a glob of it, and this is a very large surface, but you know, what I want to do is put on a very thin coat of this. Now, you could put 2 coats on if you want. You could put 3. When it is a work on paper mounted on panel, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have a few, extra layers. But I would recommend that you let each layer dry in between, and that you make each layer very thin, because this is cold wax medium when it's really thick. And as you can see, you can't see through it. It's very opaque. So if you keep it really thin, like I'm using this Messermeister here to apply it, and then you keep scraping back into it, so that what you're doing is laying down a very thin layer, and you want to make sure that you get all of it. Every corner. Now the Messermeister will glide. You can tell where you put it on and where you haven't put it on, just because if I come up here, all of a sudden there's a drag. As soon as I put it down though, it glides. Okay, and that's how you know if you put it on a certain area. And you can be kind of systematic about it, like you could start on the edge like this and work your way all the way from left to right. Whatever it takes for you to make sure that you're getting all of your painting. And then if you want to put more than 1 coat on, then I would let the first layer dry, maybe 30 minutes, a couple hours, overnight, whatever. It doesn't take a long time for this to dry. And I'm not worried about my marks on here, because after all, this painting is done and it's been drying for a pretty long time, and all those initial marks that I made, they're pretty much protected now after all the oil painting I did. In other words, if it was going to come off, it would have come off by now. This is not like an acrylic painting where I would have to say fix those marks before I put the final self-leveling gel, which is something I will do with the larger acrylic paintings. But with the oil painting, I'm not going to worry about anything smearing, because it already is encased in cold wax medium from the painting process. So I'm just making sure that I'm getting all of the painting. And take your time. The larger the painting it is, the longer it's going to take you to finish. I would have normally had this done by now, because I had the show scheduled for June of 2020, which was a few months ago, but that show at the University of Idaho got postponed, and so I never got around to finishing these. I just did other things. So now I just really do want to finish this though, because once I finish it, I can tuck these away, and right now everything is kind of just out in the studio, and I have a harder time functioning when everything's in my way. So I need to get these out of view, just get them tucked away, ready for next year, and hope that the show happens. Hope that we have a vaccine or a cure for this COVID-19. Okay, so I'm kind of just going over this whole thing. It really doesn't take too long. But you do want to be thorough. And I happen to like to finish my cradles with the cold wax medium as well. So now that I've got the surface coated, so the cradle is, you know, the edges here, all the way around. There are many ways you can finish this off. You could do it with acrylic, you could do it with oil paint, you could just do it with a varnish, polyurethane, but I just use this cold wax medium, and you'll notice that if I do it on the end where you actually can see it, you put it on, and then if you just, you know, I'll use my Messermeister, but I'll just show you how it does get a little darker. You want to work it into the wood. That was way too much. I was planning on doing this whole upper edge here, but anyways, it'll soak into the wood, it'll seal it, and you know, it is a really nice finish. You can then buff it and it gets kind of satiny, just a little bit, not a lot, not shiny or anything like that. But you know, wipe off any excess. Like right now I have way too much on just that top part. So you can see that's how much I took off, but I can just bring it down like that and just, you know, work it into the wood. Make sure it's really penetrating into the wood because you're trying to seal it. And you know, you'll get it on the top, of course, and just bring it down. Make sure you got all of it. Don't need it on the back, and you can kind of just work it in with your hand too. Something kind of satisfying about doing that. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to show you that that's really all there is to varnishing a cold wax and oil painting. It doesn't have to be anything hard. Again, I think I'd recommend 1 or 2 coats for works that are on paper, on panel. If it were just a cold wax medium and oil painting on panel, no paper, then I think 1 coat would be fine. But as long as you keep it really thin, it doesn't hurt to put 2 coats or 3 if you're really thin. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye now.